Good morning, everyone. Mike McConville here one more time for StringTechWorkstations, Stratford, Ontario, Canada. We have two Larrivee guitars in today. Larrivee is still one of my all-time favorites, and I don't stand alone with that opinion. But sometimes even a beautiful guitar like this gets a nasty, nasty bash. We can thank Southwest Airlines for that. So the first thing I want to do is restructure this temporarily so that I can run the cutter along there, cut off the old binding, and we're going to take a piece out of this top so we'll have complete access to restore the kerfing that has broken off in chunks inside the guitar. The damage actually goes around the lower bout and comes right up to here. But in the end, we want the guitar to be 100% structurally and acoustically sound. So I'm working on getting all this loose pulverized abalone out of there first so that we can flex that top down flush. So we step this up to a slightly larger spherical cutter. I've had a really good look inside at this ledge from the inside with a light, and there's all kinds of pulverized chips of abalone that are preventing the top from lying flat. Upon impact, the kerfing split and is cracked wide open. This is why we need to take this piece out, redo the kerfing completely, and when we're done, we'll completely restore the structural integrity. But there is a method in the madness, and you will see as it all comes out of the wash. Okay, we have smoothed out that busted polyurethane. We'll be able to run the bearing for the cutter along there. It's nice and smooth. After cutting out all that loose pearl that had pulverized and infiltrated in between the underside of the top and the surface of the kerfing so that this would not glue down, cut all that stuff away and then blew it out with some compressed air. It's temporary, but it's solid enough that I can now proceed to cut off this portion of the soundboard and get access to the inside, and you'll see why I'm going to that extent. And I temporarily glued in some small strips of wood just to kind of hold that form and to keep the top glued down temporarily while we get on to the next stage of the job. You can see it's almost like core sampling. The 1/4-inch diameter bit, and then just cut through the abalone just to expose that very edge so I get a sense of the thickness at that point. You can see this gap here. That gives you an indication of that kerfing pulling away, which you can't see from the outside of the guitar. We've ascertained that is the depth of cut that we're going to go with a very small dovetail cutter. So there we go. Here's the smashed kerfing that we wanted to get at, and that's part of the temporary piece I put in to allow me to actually make the cuts that I've made to this point. So we got a fairly good match grain-wise to that Sitka spruce. The reason I used a dovetail cutter here with a very shallow pitch, when I push it in tight, the angle of the dovetail allows it to lock into place. So we'll get this kerfing out, put the new kerfing in, level it with the original kerfing. As you can imagine, there were multiple decisions. This was a real Rubik's Cube, step by step by step, every decision I made. I cleaned off the kerfing that got the worst hit, but there was still a crack that extended just about 3/4 of an inch in. So I've got this clamp pulling in, this clamp pushing down to get a nice clean glue joint on the last little bit of that split in the kerfing. Here's our next step. We have the new kerfing. The replacement kerfing is being glued into place, and the little tip at the intersection of these braces is also being glued down tight to the kerfing. All of the internal restructuring is done. We've got our new kerfing on there. We've glued down that tip. Very happy with the way this turned out. This panel of quarter sawn spruce has a very slight cant on it. It locks itself into place. Got our hot hide glue here, of course, and I do have a rag inside the guitar on the back to basically soak up any drips. I don't want to starve this joint here and make sure we got plenty of glue. So now we'll let that set overnight. I actually have a rubber tipped threaded rod pushing on the inside. It'll be a lot easier to show you as I take it apart. I could write a whole book on this repair. As you can see, I've got it kind of jacked up so that the glue runs into that crack. Yeah, I think we're getting good saturation there. The Canadian School of Luthiers. We've got another piece of hockey puck here. The nice thing about this rubber is I can kind of tension it, and just by pulling it. Good. Yeah, I needed to pull back far enough so you can kind of see what I'm up to here. So this clamp is obviously way overkill. I put very little pressure, as you can imagine, on this. I just wanted to pull that rubber hockey puck in tight against that crack we were just looking at. That's it. So we're going to let that set for about an hour. This will complete all of the restructuring since this thing got smashed. Thank God for hockey pucks. So between this rubber-tipped threaded rod, this butted up against the head block, also rubber, no Mars, not a scratch, right? This pushed the busted rosewood out. The big bar clamp you saw with the hockey puck basically pulled it in. And this was the hockey puck that kind of pulled that crack together. I left that for about an hour, but I'm just going to leave that on overnight, and we'll come back tomorrow, and then we'll bring this to the next stage. There's a bad spot on the top there where that finish just flaked right off. It's actually fairly thick too, so I'm just doing my best to feather it out and get it ready for Darcy to kind of blow in. As I'm sanding, I'm trying to sort of keep that symmetry. I don't want to dig a hole in this one spot. I'm trying to feather it out nice and gradual so that once we blow it in, the entire finish will be level. I suppose I should take this opportunity to mention once again to credit Southwest Airlines for this damage. They never gave him a penny for this $4,000 guitar, almost completely destroyed. So this is the next step in this process. That shallow ledge was cut, full length of the patch. I stopped the cutter just before we touched the original material. So this last little corner here will be cut out by hand, and the same with this side, that last little tip. This will be finished by hand in preparation for the black strip that's going to go on first. Okay, I'm bringing you in here to sort of explain step by step how I've got to this stage. So after that patch was glued in, it was basically flush trimmed all the way around. So the next step was to cut this ledge that accepts the plastic strip that goes in between the abalone and the rosewood. That has been put in with CA. So a little bit at a time, I just whipped CA in there, pushed it in tight, and then hit it with this glue boost, which is kind of a cool product. So this gives you a quick, instant cure. A couple of shots, and then I moved on and made my way around right up tight. Now I'm going to bring you in a little closer. See that purfling here? So I'm going to drop the cutter down so it's just shy of this purfling all the way around, and I'm going to cut the right depth for the rosewood trim. So bear with me, people. This will all make a lot more sense as we move along. Okay, we've got that concave or inside curvature exactly where we want it. And now we'll cut the convex curvature. This little cherry veneer serves two purposes. It will seal up the spruce soundboard edge, and it will also serve as a riser to bring the abalone up flush. So I'm just mixing up some hide glue, and it's pretty well ready to go, and then we'll fit that veneer into place. Okay, we'll just set our little hide glue pot right there. Got a kind of medium-sized brush that I use to mix up the hide glue, and this is showtime. So that's a pretty thin mixture of hide glue that I mixed up. I just want to get that to tack, seal the grain of the soundboard. So quick little wipe up. We'll let that set and then get ready for the final cut. Use the flat of that tongue depressor to just kind of push that down. It feels good and solid all the way around. So that's the nice thing about hide glue. When you mix it up right, you get the right viscosity, right thickness, and just the right amount of tack. So we're going to just let that set, bone dry, and then we'll cut the ledge for the rosewood binding. Okay, so this is my storyboard cut that I made before I go anywhere near the guitar. Measured that with my verniers, the depth of the cut and the height of the cut. And now we're ready to make that final cut to install the rosewood binding. So I have done my dry run on the abalone inlay. It is not glued in yet. I will remove that inlay now and get ready to cut that ledge for the binding. I'm getting a read on that flamenco tap plate. In order to get a perfect cut, I'm going to need to actually shore this up so that the router doesn't tip slightly. Yeah, it's about 11th thou. Okay, so what we're looking at here is I have a piece of emery cloth that just so happens to be the exact same thickness as this tap plate that's on here. So I put that on, I cut the new ledge. This is the ledge for the rosewood binding. And I also have a piece of emery cloth that I ran along there, the bearing ran along there, and it's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. So let me bring you in a little closer. So the last little bit of that ledge is going to need to be done by hand. Same deal on this side. To marry up that original rosewood binding with the replacement piece I'm putting on, this will also need to be sort of cut out by hand. So we'll let that rosewood binding set, and then we'll come back and put the abalone in. Well, this is our very final dry run fit. So now we're ready to mix up a paste and glue this into place. Final drop fill and out to Darcy for finishing.